That representation. Over to you, Zari.
Thanks, Ishani, and welcome to Get-SFU Ready, the International Student Orientation. We warmly congratulate all of you on your acceptance to SFU, and if you're still waiting to hear about your admission status, we hope that you hear some good news soon, because we'd love to connect and meet you in the coming term. We're pleased that you've chosen SFU as part of your academic journey, and we're hoping that by being well informed and being aware of what you need to be aware of, that your journey will be a positive one. And so hopefully this session will help you to make that what it needs to be. And for those of you who are watching the recording, please do note that the auto caption functionality may not always be 100% accurate, but hopefully it'll do the trick. So we would like to respectfully acknowledge that Simon Fraser University is located on the stolen, unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Katsi, Coquitlam, Kaikait, Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, and Tsawwassen nations. What I've just shared is a land acknowledgement, and some of you may be familiar with the concept, while for others it might be a bit new. We acknowledge the land to honor the Indigenous peoples who have lived and worked here historically and presently, and to spread awareness of land rights in the settler colonial society. So as Ishani mentioned in the beginning, there are three of us on the team guiding you through the next little bit. If we could just do a quick introduction, I'll begin with myself. My name is Zoreen Nurani, and I'm the student transition educator for our unit at International Services for Students. Over to you, Ishani, again.
Thanks, Zari. So, Shani, as I mentioned before as well, and I'm the International Student Experience Coordinator with the SFU International Services for Students team. I was also a former international student at SFU, so I'm always really excited to welcome new international students to the SFU community. I'll be presenting on some non-immigration related topics today. Karen?
Hello, everyone. My name is Karen. I'm one of the international student advisors and immigration specialists in the International Services for Students office. And like Ishani, I was also a former international student, so it's an absolute privilege to get to be here to support you today and throughout your SFU journey.
Great. Thank you both, Ishani and Karen. So let's begin our sharing, starting with what International Students Services for Students, or also known as ISS, can do to support you in your journey here at SFU. Ishani, can I turn that over to you?
Yeah, for sure. So our office, ISS as we commonly refer to it, is a key resource for international students at SFU. So our team consists of regulated Canadian immigration consultants, such as Karen, who's on our panel today. And these advisors are licensed to provide students with advice relating to study permits, visas, work eligibility requirements in Canada. So we also offer advice on medical insurance and navigating the Canadian healthcare system. We also offer transition support to new students, and you'll hear about some of these transition initiatives a little later on in the presentation. Our office also administers our study abroad programs such as international exchanges and field schools. We also offer unique support to refugee and newcomer communities. So you can connect with our team in multiple ways. So we offer both in-person and virtual appointments at all three SFU campuses. You can also get in touch with us by email. And our website also has a wealth of resources that students can explore themselves relating to various topics for international students. So one of the resources that I would like to highlight today are the welcome guides we have for new international students. So we have 5 tailored guides that come with a downloadable step-by-step checklist based on your pathway to ensure that you're not missing out on anything important as you transition to SFU. So we highly encourage that you check these welcome guides out. They're in.
Great. Thank you, Ishani. So in terms of our presentation, hopefully around the next 30 minutes will be Karen allowing us to dive into 8 specific questions regarding immigration-related requirements, permits, and visas. And remember, all of the information that you're having here will be in this slide deck as well as in a recording, so don't worry, you'll be able to re-reference it again. And we've identified these 8 questions because we feel like they are things that are very common that come up, as well as things that will really help you to get along. So let's get started. Karen, question number 1. What immigration documents do I need to study at SFU, please?
Thank you, Soreen. And before I start to answer this question, I would just like to quickly draw everyone's attention to the disclaimer on the bottom of each of my slides. I hope you can see it there. As we've experienced over the last year or more, actually, Canadian immigration policy continues to change quite rapidly and without notice. So therefore, the information that we're sharing with you today is current as of today, which for those of you who are watching the recording is November the 15th, 2024. So to move into answering this question, most international students require a study permit to study at SFU. In addition to that, depending on your country of citizenship, you may also need a visa or an electronic travel authorization in order to travel to Canada. If we look at the left side of the slide, the travel documents section, you will see that there are 2 documents or travel authorizations listed: the temporary resident visa, or the TRV, and the electronic travel authorization, or ETA. The TRV is also sometimes referred to as student visa, and it's a document required by visa-required citizens to travel to Canada. It's a visa that will be stamped inside your passport. The ETA, on the other hand, is an electronic travel authorization required for most TRV-exempt foreign nationals, with some exceptions, and it is electronically linked to your passport. The TRV and the ETA do not give the holder legal immigration status in Canada, but instead they are travel documents or travel authorizations that allow you to physically travel to Canada and ask for admission to the country. If you require a TRV or an ETA, they would be automatically issued to you if you applied for your study permit outside Canada and your application has been approved. Moving on to the study permit is your immigration status document. So this is important because it gives you temporary immigration status in Canada. It allows you to pursue your studies at SFU, and it also allows you to remain in Canada for a specific period of time. If you will be traveling to Canada for the first time for the spring 2025 term, and your outside Canada study permit application has been approved, you're actually going to receive your permit upon entering Canada at the port of entry and after an examination with a border services officer. So I hope that helps to answer that question.
Thanks, Karen, for outlining all things related to documents. So let's go to question number 2. What if I'm transferring to SFU from another school and I have a study permit? Do I need to apply for a new study permit?
This is a great question. And actually, this morning, November the 15th, 2024, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC, announced changes to how current study permit holders will be able to change schools. Given the magnitude of these changes, we wanted to share them with you as soon as possible. And as a caveat, we are currently waiting for further clarification from IRCC on the details of these changes. So what I will share with you today is the information that comes directly from the IRCC website, which you can also access via the QR code on this slide. Although IRCC announced this information today, it's our understanding, based on their website, that these changes came into effect on November the 8th, 2024. This information was not shared with us, and it was not shared to the public by IRCC until this morning, today. So the changes include that some study permit holders must now apply for a new study permit and receive approval of their new study permit application before they can begin studying at their new school. Based on our understanding of IRCC's website thus far, this includes study permit holders transferring from a Canadian high school to SFU, and also students transferring from another designated learning institution, or DLI in Canada, like a college or university, to SFU. Depending on processing times from IRCC's side and whether or not you will need a new study permit, admission deferral may be something that you can consider in the event that you will not have a study permit, allowing you to study at SFU starting in January 2025. And I will touch on the admission deferral information a bit later in the presentation. I understand that this may come as a surprise to many of you and that you may have questions and concerns given your own unique situation. And I'm going to do my very best and my team to help answer the questions that you have. However, we are also still waiting for further details to be released by IRCC. SFU is committed to keeping you informed, however, as more information is made available, and we will be sending out an email to students as we learn more. And I just want you to know that we're here to help you navigate through this uncertainty. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen, for laying out the reality of where things are at today and going forward. And again, you are not alone out there. We are all here with you. There are other students being impacted by some of these changes. So rest assured, we can all join this journey together. Just let's stay informed and in touch. Moving on to question number 3. If I am applying for a study permit, do I need a provincial attestation letter, otherwise known as a PAL?
So unless exempted, study permit applicants are required to include a provincial attestation letter or a territorial attestation letter in their study permit application. Here in BC, students that require one will be issued a provincial attestation letter, like we call it a PAL for short. The current list of PAL exemptions can be found on the IRCC website, and I've included a QR code to that page on this slide for you to review as well. Under the current requirements, students applying to study in a master's degree or a doctoral degree program and students in Canada applying to extend their study permit are exempt from needing to include a PAL in their study permit application. Undergraduate students applying outside Canada for a study permit, however, currently do require a PAL in their study permit application. So it's really important to read through the exemptions and to understand them. I wanted to also draw your attention to an announcement made by IRCC on September the 18th, 2024, which signaled upcoming changes to the PAL requirement, among others. These changes have not yet been implemented by IRCC, however, but if you would like to read their announcement and our kind of breakdown of the announcement, you can visit the link at the bottom of this slide, and that will take you to our news and updates post, which is entirely about this topic. And we will be adding to this post as we receive further information on that piece as well.
Great, thank you. Moving on to question 4. Do study permit holders have to study full-time every term?
This is a very common question that we get from students, and I can understand why, because the information out there, it can be quite confusing. So first of all, I think it's important to understand what is full-time study, what does that mean? And you can visit our enrollment requirements website. The QR code is at the bottom right of this page to review the full-time definition at SFU for undergraduate and graduate students. I recommend familiarizing yourself with this definition as you prepare for your course planning now and in your future terms. And note that the definition is different depending on if you're undergraduate student or if you're a graduate student. So your enrollment at SFU, and by enrollment, I mean whether you're studying full-time or part-time, affects your ability to work, study, and stay in Canada after you complete your studies. We're going to talk a bit more about working in Canada during and after your studies in a little bit, but for now, I'm just going to focus on your study permit and the conditions you need to adhere to as a study permit holder. As a study permit holder, you are expected to actively pursue your studies in Canada and make reasonable progress towards the completion of your study program. From IRCC's perspective, this means that you must remain enrolled in each formal academic session or term during your studies in Canada. So I would like to briefly describe how formal academic session or terms are defined, because at SFU, they also differ between undergraduate and graduate students. For SFU graduate students, the spring, summer, and fall terms are considered formal academic sessions or terms for immigration purposes, whereas for undergraduate students, the spring and fall terms are considered formal academic sessions for immigration purposes. To be considered actively pursuing studies as required by IRCC, you actually can be enrolled in a full-time or occasionally a part-time unit or credit load from the perspective of your study permit. But with this being said, part-time study can impact your eligibility to work on and off campus while you study, and it could also impact your future eligibility for a post-graduation work permit. Studying part-time can also have some non-immigration related considerations attached. So we always recommend students consult with the applicable departments at SFU, like financial aid and awards if you're receiving a scholarship or an award, residence and housing if you're living on campus, academic advising if you're concerned about your course planning, just to make sure you also explore those non-immigration considerations if you want to or need to drop down to a part-time study load. Next slide, please.
So many of us all need work to survive, and Vancouver and Canada is a place where that really does need to happen. It can be expensive, and we know that you want good experience. So the big question is, can I work in Canada while I am studying? What are some of the things that we need to know about that, Karen?
Yeah, so this is another very common question we get from students. And while you are studying in Canada, the good news is that you may be eligible to work on campus, off campus, and also in an SFU required internship or co-op term. So these are 3 different types of work that you might be eligible to pursue while you're here. And I'm going to go through the eligibility requirements for each of these in the next few minutes. So we'll start with on-campus work. If you meet certain requirements, which you will see on this slide, you can work on campus without a work permit while you study. And you might be thinking, what does it mean by on-campus work? So as per IRCC's definition of on-campus, this means that you can work at the buildings within the boundaries of the SFU campus. So on-campus employers can include many different types of jobs. So it could be self-employment if you're located at the school. If you're working as a teaching assistant or a research assistant, that would be considered on-campus work at SFU. Private business that provides on-campus services to the school, and so on, and SFU itself. So you can review the full definition of what constitutes on-campus work on the IRCC website. But if you ever have any questions, you're unsure, you can always reach out to us too, and we can help you figure out, is this on-campus work or off-campus work? To work on campus, you must first of all have a valid study permit. And that permit must include a condition printed on it that says you can work or accept employment if eligible. To this point, I always recommend that students check their study permits just to make sure that those conditions are appearing on your permit. And if they're not, you can contact one of us international student advisors, immigration specialists, and we can help you with the process of updating your permit. You'll also need to be enrolled or studying full-time at SFU in the term or terms that you wish to work on campus. And you will also require a valid social insurance number, which we also call a SIN number, for any work you do in Canada. This number is used for taxation purposes. It's required for your employer to pay you as well. And so that's something that you can apply to Service Canada for. And I have linked their website from this slide as well. So now we can move on to off-campus work. To work off campus, in addition to being enrolled full-time and holding a valid study permit with work conditions, you must also be enrolled in a program at SFU that's at least 6 months in length and leads to a degree, diploma, or certificate. And again, you'll also need a social insurance number or SIN to pursue off-campus work so that you can receive your payment. As was also announced today, as of November the 8th, 2024, study permit holders who meet the requirements to work off campus are now permitted to work up to 24 hours per week off campus, unless it is a regularly scheduled break. During regularly scheduled breaks, you may work on a full-time basis, providing you meet the eligibility criteria to do so. And I've included some examples of what might constitute a regularly scheduled break for SFU students on this slide. And also linked to our website where we outline what's regularly scheduled break for undergrad student, what's a regularly scheduled break for graduate students, because again, they're slightly different, as well as the rules you would need to meet in order to be allowed to work full-time during that break. Next slide, please. And finally, we are here to talk about co-op work. So co-op work would apply if you're accepted into an SFU co-op program, or if your SFU program has a mandatory co-op, internship, or practicum requirement built into the curriculum. In these cases, you will need to apply for a co-op work permit in addition to your study permit so that you can pursue your SFU work terms. You can request a co-op work permit when you apply for your very first study permit from outside of Canada, if your SFU letter of acceptance confirms that there's a mandatory internship in your program. But otherwise, you can also apply for a co-op work permit from here in Canada. And it's an online application, and the application is actually free, which is nice. Whether you apply in Canada or outside of Canada, you do require documentation from SFU that confirms that there is a co-op, internship, or practicum requirement in your study program. This is most often a co-op letter that SFU would issue to you. And like I mentioned before, otherwise it might be included in your official SFU letter of acceptance. It's important to remember that this co-op work permit, if you do end up getting one, it can only be used for work that is an essential part of your program of study at SFU. So it can't be used for any other type of work other than work that's part of your studies and that you're enrolled for. So next question, please.
Yeah, thanks, Karen, for running us through working on campus, working off campus, and possibly working as part of a co-op. So let's say now we've fast forwarded, we've graduated, and we are interested in staying and getting some more experience. So question number 6 is, can I stay in Canada and work after I finish my studies at SFU?
Another very popular question. And so full-time international students may be eligible to apply for a work permit upon completing their program of study in Canada. This is called a post-graduation work permit. You may have heard of it before. The post-graduation work permit is an open work permit issued for up to 3 years in length, and you don't need a job offer or work experience